So I've been taking pictures on the street for like 10 years now, and in a moment of rare self-belief, I figured I'd make a video dispensing some tips, because there aren't any videos on YouTube offering tips on street photography. These aren't like technical tips, these are more sort of mindful tips, I think. Things that I've learnt taking street photos for so many years. Ways mainly to keep motivated. I found I've always really struggled with motivation when taking street photographs. You're going out often around the same area, doing the same thing over and over again, posting them on social media. It can be quite easy to get into not a great pattern, not a great habit. It's been very important to me to change up these habits, change up the way I do things regularly, and sort of keep my mind in check. So I wanted today to run through these little snippets of what I've learnt, and hopefully other people find them useful. So the first thing that I've really found important to do is to plan out where and when I want to take street photographs. Since becoming a father 2.5 years ago, I've definitely had less time for taking photos, so I've had to be much more intentional with the way I take street photos, and that's meant carving out time and focusing my time around events or around times when I know there will be more footfall. For example, last weekend I went out into London specifically with the intention of taking photographs at the Lord Mayor's Show. The Lord Mayor's Show is some sort of strange traditional London event that happens every year. It's been going on for 669 years, apparently. 696 years, apparently. It's a vibe, you know, there's lots of marching, lots of bands, just a lot more people in the East End of London specifically. So I went out purely with the intention of taking photographs at this event, and having these kind of moments in mind has been extremely helpful over the years. I used to spend a lot of time just going out with no direction, no real idea of what I wanted to photograph, just sort of aimlessly leaving the house and hoping for the best. And I just realised that that is not the way I like to take pictures anymore. And just having that in mind and being aware of like footfall, having maybe a clearer plan of where you want to be at a certain time. These type of events in particular, I think you can get really good results if you show up early to when they're being set up and get some like behind the scenes, I guess. Yeah, that's been a real helpful thing for me, is thinking about street photography in this way. I know people who go out just with no plan, are happy to just do the same loop around London. But for me, I just don't have the time to do that anymore. I don't have the motivation to do that. And being able to go for like 2 to 3 hours to these events and do some like concentrated street photography has been very, very motivating to me. And we have on our Discord as well, we have a private Discord for the Framelines community, and we're often sharing advice and sharing little tips and stuff there about what's going on. So it's really cool to have that. And that brings me on to my second point that's been really important for me over the years, is finding like-minded people to discuss street photography with, to share your thoughts on street photography, to meet up with in person. We have a Framelines community which has a private Discord, and we also chat on WhatsApp about inspiration. We meet up regularly, we share photo books and YouTube videos. That's been incredibly important for me. Shane, who I run this channel with, we met at a street photography exhibition. When photography takes over your life, you will find that you want to talk to more photographers who have a shared perspective, shared experience, shared passion and obsession with photography. And if you're lucky enough to meet up with other photographers and go for photo walks, being able to see how other photographers approach street photography and see how they take photos is also really motivating. You'll often find that if there's like 3 or 4 of you together, all photographing the same scene, you will have all taken completely different photographs. It's really interesting how that happens. Everybody has a different point of view and perspective when they go out taking street photos. So I really recommend, I don't know, you can either join the Framelines community or reach out to other photographers in your area. But for me, that's been a really important way to stay motivated. Something else I've really found myself doing is experimenting a lot with video, which doesn't seem like it would be very useful for street photography, but for me, it really has been. You'll find that pretty much any mirrorless camera now will shoot amazing 4K video. And I often do like to go out just with the intention of shooting video. Like, I will set myself a challenge of not taking a single photograph. And what that kind of teaches me is how to slow down, how to be more thoughtful around composition. These are things that people often say about film photography, but for me, I can kind of get that same feeling just through shooting little vignettes, little moments on video. There's just an extra dimension I think you can add to your experience and the way you observe things. I think being able to like diversify your skill set is very important. I found myself getting very stuck in a rut doing the same thing over and over again. I've always found that one of the most motivating things I can do in any kind of aspect of my life, separate to photography, is just learn something new. And with video, there is a whole new skill set. There's, getting the correct exposure, you've got to think about audio, you have to think about color grading, and of course like composition, and whether you want to shoot handheld or lock off the camera. There's loads and loads to think about, and when it does all come together, it's very, very rewarding. And the skills around composition and framing are all interchangeable between video and photography. And yeah, there's just something about video and having this option in your back pocket if you potentially aren't feeling as motivated to take photos. It's really cool, and if anybody's like tentatively thinking about giving it a go, I would just say why not, because you've got nothing to lose, and it's really, really fun. It's a really different way to kind of open your mind. I'm not saying start a YouTube channel, because that's probably a terrible idea. What do I know? If you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you'll see I've tried a lot of different cameras over the years. Partly that's gas, partly that's COVID. Got very into trying new cameras over COVID when I couldn't go out. Part of that is just refining how I take photographs and thinking about how I enjoy taking photographs, and realizing that certain cameras have different use cases. A rangefinder style camera is probably more suited to taking street photographs. A DSLR or a medium format style camera is probably more suited to portraits or a slower form of photography. So I wouldn't ever say that gear doesn't matter, because for me it kind of has always mattered. I also just really enjoy trying different cameras, but I think there's definitely something around finding a camera that works best for you and leaning into that, and then also not being scared to experiment with different focal lengths. I've seen a lot of talk on the internet about one camera, one lens, but I've never been one for just locking myself into a style or a look. And again, that falls into this thought of finding different ways to stay motivated and experimenting. And yeah, I just can't ever be the person who would just take the same kind of photographs over and over again. If I see a nice sunset, I'm not going to be snobby about it. I'm going to take a picture of a nice sunset. I think it's important to not lock yourself into one style and one genre, especially if you intend on taking pictures for a long period of time. If you look at photographers like Joel Murray, portraits, still lifes, landscapes. And I think it's just important to diversify your skill set and try different types of gear and see how you can create different types of images with different types of cameras. So yeah, gear isn't important until it is. And then my final thought is that it's important to maintain a healthy relationship with social media. For me, it's always been a necessary evil. Photography is my livelihood, and the way I reach people is through social media. For a very long time, I had a very unhealthy relationship with it. I would post pictures on it multiple times a day, get very downtrodden if things didn't perform. But it's taken me a while to get to this point of being like, it is what it is. It's a useful tool. It's how I've met so many amazing people and connect with other photographers. It's the main way I consume street photography at the moment. But for me, I've had to keep a balance. I've had to set myself boundaries. I have this app that if I open Instagram when I'm not allowed to, it turns on the front-facing camera on my phone, and I get to see my own ugly face staring down, trying desperately to open Instagram. That's really helped. Thinking a lot about, being a parent as well, and the impact this has on children and what it's going to mean as they grow up. Yeah, I try not to think about it too much because it gets a bit scary, but for me it's been very, very important to maintain a balance with it, and I'm trying quite hard to do that. Generally, I think it's just very important to not let it dictate your self-worth as a photographer or an artist, and to also not let it give you any kind of real direction. I think what's popular on social media isn't necessarily good. If something's popular on Instagram, it just means it's popular. It doesn't mean it's good. And that's always something I've had to remind myself. Hopefully those are some useful thoughts. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this idea of a street photography community, check out our Patreon. That'll give you access to the private Discord and our monthly street assignments, which are also a great way to keep motivated when taking pictures on the street. Big thank you for watching along. Bye!
S'il avait 10 ans, les pommes,